It's that workplaces in general are cesspools of toxicity, which are run by the privileged few who do not need to do the work on themselves, and so they don't bother. But who feels the impact? Everybody else. Hi, how are you doing today? This is Spoony Squared, where we talk about how to thrive in the workplace when you have invisible barriers working against you. In particular, autism and chronic conditions, which is what I have. I'm Dr. Becky Sage, and I am autistic, and I have an illness called axial spondyloarthritis. And today we're going to cut to the core. Let's talk about workplaces, and in particular I'm going to focus on my journey as an autistic person and how the workplace has impacted me and how my autism has stood in the way, has stood as a barrier in the workplace. 3 in 10, in fact less than 3 in 10 adults with autism are in employment. That's such a low statistic, and yet it's not surprising when we actually get to the root of it. And that doesn't really count people like me, who I wouldn't be counted in any unemployment statistics. I have been very lucky to have had employment to a certain level most of my life, but a lot of that time I've been self-employed, and I might go for periods of weeks or months when I cannot work. So, and like I said, I wouldn't be included in those statistics. So let's get to it. Why is it so hard to succeed in the workplace when you have autism? Now, I do have a simple answer for that. It's that workplaces in general are cesspools of toxicity, which are run by the privileged few who do not need to do the work on themselves, and so they don't bother. But who feels the impact? Everybody else. And it's really sad that I think that about the workplace. It's certainly been my experience. Not actually that the majority of people are bad people or who are difficult people, but that the systems of the workplace are not built for everyone to succeed. They're not really built for anyone to succeed. And I've been very shocked, actually, the more I work with people, especially those who come from bigger institutions or corporate backgrounds, just how many games get played. I firmly believe that if we made workplaces that worked for autistic people, then they would work a lot better for everybody. So, and that's a mission of mine. This is like such a passion of my life, is about building workplaces that are inclusive, that have inclusive cultures. So they are built in a way that allows people's strength to shine. And that helps the workplaces, it helps the people that they're serving, and it helps the people that they're employing. Ultimately, that helps the whole of society. That is why this is my bugbear. So I wanted to jump in and just talk about the things that have impacted me throughout my career in the workplace. And for me, this is a reflection because I didn't know I was autistic when I was going through a lot of things. So for me, this is about how my autistic traits stood in the way of me making progress in the workplace. And a little bit about my workplace journey to start with. I did a PhD in chemical physics, so I would say that that was when my what I felt like my career journey started. I actually had done other things in the workplace prior to that had been a lot more successful than my PhD. For example, being a gymnastics coach, even doing my work experience, which got me other work in a stockbrokers. It was a very data entry kind of job, and I was very young, and it allowed me to make a bit of money, which was great. And it was very clear what my role was. When I went to do my PhD, the environment was a very, very difficult environment to be in. That sucked my self-esteem, and from then on, I really felt challenged in the workplace. Ultimately, I decided to create a portfolio career where I did a mixture of paid work and then other types of work. So maybe some voluntary work, but also running my own business, consulting, and doing creative work as well. So, and throughout all of this time, I've always felt challenged in the workplace. I've always felt stress, consistent stress in the workplace, dread every single day. And then I started running my own business, and for 7 years I ran my own business, and that came with its own stresses, but I think it was probably in some ways the easiest workplace environment. So I was indeed a CEO for many years, and I had a team of people working for me. And like I said, in some ways I think that was the easiest workplace environment that I'd ever been in. So what is it that makes working really difficult for someone with autism? Let's start with what I think is maybe the most obvious one: social interactions, or the social expectations of the workplace. Now, first and foremost, there's this whole piece about building your network, whether that's in the job that you already have or whether it's kind of outside of that and you're building your network so it can help you develop through your career. To me, that is incredibly difficult, incredibly draining. I honestly don't know how I did it initially, which I did do early in my career, and I found myself burning out over and over again. I found myself feeling very unconfident, and when I did go to networking events, I didn't really feel like myself. I was very closed off. And so that social piece is a really important one in terms of the way businesses are built these days, or organizations. And there's such a I can't think of the word now. There is such a premium put on your ability to go out there and socialize. And I actually, any success I've had in this, I put down to my acting training that I had, that I've always had, and my ability to be a performer, because I think that stood me in good stead. But even so, social situations, even if that's like as much as the like standing by the coffee machine and talking to people, or you know, what they say about the water cooler chats in work, oh my gosh, like they just could set you up for failure for the rest of the day. And but up to the point of, you know, in the workplace, one of my first workplaces, or first few workplaces, there was a lot of expectation to go to the pub on Friday night, and this was just like such a, I just felt my skin crawling every time I would do that. And like I said, I was never representing myself properly in those environments. So how is that going to help me in my career? I know that other people around me like thought I was awkward and strange, and I felt more bullied by my peers. I was bullied by my peers in that first, during my PhD for sure, bullied or ignored. And so that was definitely something that I think really held me back. I think I have, now in hindsight, I know that I do lack certain skills in terms of interactions with people and understanding people, and those interactions are related to playing the game. They're related to seeing when you are being manipulated. So that's what I would say my skills that were lacking were around that side of things. And I'll come on to that again a little bit later. So, of course, related to the social piece, the other piece is mirroring and masking, and also that kind of constant chatter in your mind, which of course leads to the fatigue every time we go out and we're interacting with people. So the mirroring and masking is definitely something that I have done to an extreme. And they say that the main difference, just for anyone who wants clarity, the main difference between mirroring and masking with autistic people and with neurotypical people, is that with autistic people, it's the impact that makes a difference. So everybody does, in social circumstances, mirror and mask. So and I will do more, I'll do other videos on what that actually means, what that looks like, and you can find details of that on other people's channels. But mirroring and masking in autistic people has a much bigger impact, to the point that it can lead people to feel suicidal and lost and losing hope. And that's something I resonate with, is that feeling of just such a high impact of those social interactions. And so that's another big piece where the workplace has always felt really, really hard, because it relies on these social interactions, and then you're mirroring and masking all the time. And way before I knew I was autistic, I just had these continued burnouts, and I had this like pattern of burning out over and over and over again, which was actually one of the reasons why in the end I came for an autism diagnosis. And that comes from the mirroring and masking. And with that burnout came this lack of hope, and this continued so I've always had a drive to succeed in the workplace. It's been like the main thing I've done in my life, and yet consistently finding myself in a place where there is no hope, because you're so burnt out, but then you're also hearing that you have to have these social interactions in order to succeed in the workplace. Now I know where I'm at. Now I understand about mirroring and masking. I can see other ways forward. And actually, because I've been autistic and because I've built what is a relatively successful career over the last 20 years, I have actually found strategies to help me overcome some of this in the workplace. But it's taken a lot of time, and without the label I didn't really realize what was going on, and so it's not been until I've been diagnosed that I can actually be a lot more clear about what's going on and what my boundaries need to be. So certainly mirroring and masking and relating that to the social piece. And again, it's this idea of you just don't fit in, this ongoing awkwardness in the workplace. And because workplaces are created to be these bubbles where you are meant to go and feel a sense of belonging, and that sense of belonging is a really, really important part of being a motivated employee, of being an engaged employee. It's a part of it, and that doesn't mean going to the pub every week. The sense of belonging for me, which is at the best, is when you can go in and you can get your work done and you feel like that's what you are there to do, that you're not being judged because you're a bit awkward, because your special interests or your just general interests are weird to other people, or because you don't know how to have those social conversations, or because you're so burnt out after them that you start avoiding them. None of those things to me are what belonging means in the workplace. Belonging is, I am excited to go to work and do my job. You don't have to be excited every day, but I am ready. I'm going to go in, I'm going to do my job, I'm going to feel satisfaction from my job, I'm going to feel like I'm adding value and making a difference. But all these other factors can play against our feeling of belonging. So that's, I think, a really big one for me too. But the one thing that has maybe impacted me more than anything is my vulnerability in the workplace, and vulnerability when it comes to working alongside other people. I have a pattern in my life of ending up affiliated as basically somebody's right-hand man or woman. That there is a very, very strong personality who for some reason I end up with, and this has been something as I look back, I'm like, oh, that has happened time and time again, in particular in the workplace. And one of close friends of mine said to me, you put up with too much for too long. And this took this vulnerability piece. So those kind of dominant characters who I've ended up working alongside have absolutely sucked the life out of me. They have cast a shadow. They have, because again, mirroring and masking, I've ended up being like losing myself completely in some of these things that we're doing. And then when I kind of re-find myself, my self-esteem is really low, because I really can't identify, how have I added value? Have I been sticking to my values? I feel these other people like pulling at my integrity, and yet I also feel tied to them in some way. I feel like my income, my security is tied to those people, and or my future in some way is tied to those people. Maybe for many people that happens more in relationships, in social situations outside of the workplace. But for me, this has always happened in the workplace, or kind of in school early on as well. And these dominant people take advantage because they can, and then they leave you depleted. And like I said, this has happened to me time and time again, and I catch it quicker every single time. But I think it's because I've got this voice in my head that says, you need people in order to be successful. You need to be with this other person. Oh, you can't build a business by yourself because you're not good at the social stuff. And yet, actually, I do have the skills that I need to do it. And so this piece of it is a piece that I think has impacted me over and over again. People taking advantage of you because you're vulnerable, and you, I guess, put up with it because it's already so hard in the workplace. It's already been such a struggle. There's no energy left to fight this, or to even maybe notice that it's going on. It takes a long time to get to that point of realizing what's happening, and by that time you're kind of in things quite deep, and then you don't want to step out of something that you've been working on for a really, really long time. And so then you have two choices. And ultimately, I have been able to get to the point where I have stepped up and stepped into my own integrity and overcome some of these things and become the person that I wanted to be in those situations. But it's taken a lot of hard work. And then the other thing I want to mention is this piece about integrity. From what I can tell, and I hate this, and I really, really hope it is not everywhere, and it's just a lot of the places and the people that I've worked with, but the games in the workplace, I've always refused to play them. I do not play games. And it's this whole, like, I guess some people have real self-protection and manipulation that goes on in the workplace, and this kind of like just trying to climb higher and higher at the expense of others. Whereas I very much believe that when you find the right people and you get power with other people, then you can create something even better. But there still seems to be this thing where people are always playing games. And we know that with autism, we can be quite black and white in our thinking, and we can actually be very, very sure of who we are, what we need, and what our values are. And I think for me, this has also been something in the workplace that has held me back. But honestly, like, I'm glad it's held me back, because I don't want to manipulate. I don't want to play games. I want to hold on to my integrity. And so in some ways, that's like a pro and a con, because let's be real, money is also the other thing that is completely connected to the workplace and workplace success. If you're one of those 7 in 10 people who's unemployed, then that means money is something that you don't necessarily have. It means independence may be something that is much, much harder to find. And even if you're one of those 3 in 10 people who is in work, then perhaps it's been like my workplace experiences, whereby there have been times when I've been able to bring money in, and then there have been times when I haven't been able to bring any money in at all. And so financially, it can be really, really hard as well. And again, I think that burnout plays a massive part in this, but also this piece about not playing the games. Because in many workplaces, in order to keep climbing and getting that higher salary, it's all about kind of playing the games. And for me, that's it's not worth it if those games involve losing my integrity. So that's definitely been things that have really held me back. And then the final thing, which is slightly different tack, which is about, actually, before I do one final thing, I was going to say one more thing. I was just thinking about kind of how much of ourselves we hide as well. So of course there's mirroring and masking, but I have often had to remove myself from the workplace, or I haven't been able to go into work at all because I am in shutdown, or I'm about to melt down, and I can kind of feel it coming. I don't think I've ever really had, no, that's not true, I have melted down in the workplace, but it's not been something that's impacted me lots and lots of times. Although, like, I essentially lost a job partly because of that, and partly because I wouldn't have a relationship with the boss, which is why I melted down, which comes back to my piece about integrity. So anyway, so yeah, it's definitely held me back in the workplace. That literally just came back to me in that moment. So, and of course we know kind of mirroring and masking is to like stop us, is to kind of try and hide stims, trying to fit in. My stims have always been acceptable stims anyway, so this is one of the reasons why my autism didn't get diagnosed until a lot later. So that is something that I haven't like had to worry about as much in the workplace. But I do still stim in various ways all the time, and I do have needs in the workplace, which I'll come on to in a minute, in terms of how to look after yourself in the workplace and how to maybe make the workplace work for you, which I will do future videos on as well. So the last piece I was coming on to, which was about special interests, and what I found is if my work does not align with special interests, then the whole of the workplace experience feels like this big, horrible, like gauntlet that you're running with no reward at the end. Like, that's how I feel. If it is aligned with special interests, if you can find flow and get into like those really great places in work, then it's absolutely the most amazing thing. And so that's the way I've tried to craft my life. But of course, one thing that's happened for me, and another reason I didn't get diagnosed until later, was that the workplace was burning me out so much that I had no space for my special interests. And so that led to like all sorts of things, but like certainly that had played a part in an eating disorder that I had for a very long time. It certainly played a part in anxiety and depression, and played a part in just like not being able to sustain my energy over time. So special interests don't have to like actually take place in the workplace, but the workplace does need to leave enough space for special interests. And you know, for me, and again, this is something that I was doing before I was diagnosed, a long time before, I've always tried to find a career that aligns with things that I am passionate about and that I really want to do, the skills that I really want to use. And I always advise that people try and find those kind of career paths. So, and like I said, I think that that comes into the extreme for me, and will come into the extreme for all autistic people. If you're not doing your special interests, then that can really lead you to a very difficult place. We talked about lacking in hope before, but I've definitely had, I've had clinical depression a number of times over the last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years that I've been in the workplace. And I think that played a part in it, is just not being able to do special interests. And again, you end up with no hope because so much of your energy is getting drained by the workplace that you just feel like, well, what's even the point? But there is a point, and we can turn it around. And actually, autism I'm not going to say it can be helpful in the workplace, but we do know that people can thrive in the workplace with autism. And again, I will do more videos on this, but this one's just about kind of thinking about what works for me. And so the first things I did were to really work on management techniques, time management and energy management. I think energy management is more important than time management, actually. Yeah, energy management has been very, very important. So this is looking at kind of what things give you energy, what things take energy away, how are you pacing, are you giving yourself enough rest, are you doing enough of the activities that build up your energy. Related to that is also even things like, are you eating enough? Are you drinking enough? Are you getting outside? Are you moving your body? And that's something that I want to come back to as well. So really focusing on all of those things that are going to help build your energy so that you do have the strength to maybe tackle some of those harder situations, or you do still have the energy to do your special interests after the end of the day. The other thing is focusing on strengths and focusing on the wins. So focusing on your strengths, I think, is really important. A number of times over the years, I've been asked by people like, should you spend more time focusing on your strengths or focusing on your weaknesses? And honestly, like, if it's a choice between the two, you focus on your strengths. You will also want to develop skills that help to make sure that your weaknesses aren't stopping you from being able to use your strengths at all. But at the end of the day, focusing on your strengths is something that I first did with a coach of mine and my podcast co-host, who's called Amy Armstrong, and she was really the one that introduced me to this. And once I started to do that, I realized, oh, this works so much better. And then something we do with my current team is we not only look at the strengths that you have, but the strengths that you want to use, the strengths that bring you joy. And I think that that's super important as well. So focusing on the strengths and focusing on the strengths that you want to continue to develop and continue to use. I have fallen down the trap of doing things that I'm really good at, but I don't necessarily enjoy doing, and then that leads you down these career paths that you don't necessarily even want to be on, and it means that you're not enjoying your work. And then focusing on the wins is another important piece of that. So how are you kind of looking at, even like day by day, what is it you're looking at? And I see so many people focusing on like all these things that are going wrong. And we would say that that's like the judge in your head of like, oh, why did you do this? Why did so-and-so say that? Oh, you didn't manage to get this right. You didn't manage to get that right. And I definitely am guilty of putting myself down over and over and over again, but you don't have to. And I think it's so important at the end of the day to be able to say, these were the things that went well today. These are the things I liked about today. These are the things I want to take forwards and have more of. And we can literally do that on a day-by-day basis. So focusing on the wins, I think, is really, really important. One thing, as I've already mentioned, that really has held me back is spending too much time on people who have bad behavior in the workplace and tolerating that. Someone said to me the other day, what we permit persists. And I just think that's rung true so many times in my career. If you let it keep happening, it's going to keep happening. And it's actually going to get worse because it's going to build up over time. And people are going to see you as somebody that essentially allows them to do this bad behavior. So that's something that I'm still working on, is really making sure that I cut out bad behavior sooner rather than later. And that can look like different things. It can be about how you react to situations. It can be about how you talk to the other person and help them to develop, if that's something that is possible to do. It's not always possible. And it can look like you getting yourself out of that situation, which I know like really does not seem possible a lot of the time. It's hard enough to get work, right? It's hard enough to be one of those 3 in 10 who's getting paid. So to be able to then be like, oh, I'm going to walk away from this because I've got a toxic boss, is something that is just not always possible. And also, like, the word of warning on this as well is that sometimes if something's not working for us, actually it might be something that you can shift first of all, and then it will work for you. So sometimes it might be a change in mindset, or you might just want to kind of remove yourself from a specific person, but actually the workplace itself is fine and you can keep going. I mean, not everything every day is going to always feel great, but shouldn't feel bad like most of the time or all of the time. And associated with getting rid of the bad people is find the good people. I know it feels like there's no hope sometimes, that there's no good people out there, but there really is. I've learned that over time, that there are some great people out there in the workplace, and you need to really try and find those people. They're there for you. Hi, I'm here too. Like, you can say hi to me. You can drop a note in the comments. I'll get back to you for sure. So there are good people out there who want you to succeed, and that's something that you can really lean into. Those people are going to help you also build a wall that protects you from those toxic people. In fact, not build a wall. What somebody said to me once, they allow you to put your golden cloak on so that you can shine. That's what you want to do. We don't want to be building walls up. We want to be shining brighter, so we eliminate the shadows. And then the other thing that you can do as well is really make the most of the changing face of the workplace, or the changing ways of the workplace. So we know that COVID has changed so much in the workplace, but a lot was changing already in terms of being more remote, being able to work from home, being able to work for yourself and generate revenues in different ways, being able to have more flexible working, being able to build a portfolio career where you have some work that might be part-time and paid for from an employer, somewhere it might be you doing your own consultancy work, for example. So really making the most. If you need to not be in the office because of those sensory issues, because of the social challenges, which were the things that always got me, then you can work from home more. Working from home is like such a godsend to me. I love it so much. And I actually find myself getting, like, again, but a bit prickly when people say, oh, it'd be so much easier if we were all just in the same place. And I'm like, no, it wouldn't. It wouldn't be easier for me, for sure. It would make it even harder. So all of these things mean that it is possible. And by taking the steps for yourself and giving yourself power through your career journey, from trying to flip the situations that might feel challenging and turn them into situations that can work for you, get the benefits from them, then you can be part of building a workplace that is accepting of autistic people, that is built for autistic people, and is actually therefore a better culture for all people. Let's create these workplaces. Let's do it together. I would love to know about your workplace experiences. This is still a relatively new channel for me, so please do put questions in the comments. If you have anything else that you want to hear about, any other topics you want me to talk about, then put them in the comments. And don't forget to head over and watch some of my other videos. And if you like it, please like and subscribe, because I'm just getting started and I really need to build up my numbers so that I can keep doing this more. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that was useful for you, and thank you for listening.